is always trying to ice skate uphill.
Welcome everybody to Blerdlines. This is your man Cam. With me, as always, is
the other Cam, aka formerly of the Old Republic,
as well as
everybody's favorite Nick fan. Go Knicks, go Knicks, go Knicks, go New York, go New York, go. Rick Brunson, Jalen Brunson for president, and this is Josh.
As well as
it's Professor D. What's up, everybody?
Can I interrupt real quick about the Knicks?
Yep.
The word Knickerbocker has to be pronounced very slowly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
and enunciated very carefully.
I learned that lesson as a youth. Yes, that is quite correct.
That's why everyone says the Knicks instead.
What I was heard saying and what I was saying as a youngster were two radically different things, and I got into a boatload of trouble before I was able to calm those waters.
And we're back, as you can tell. It's a couple of us are based in New York, so it's New York crazy right now. But we are back talking Star Wars, and not the Jedi Sith Star Wars. It's the everybody else in the galaxy, because apparently it's a big galaxy and it's far, far away. So we're talking about Andor. Season 2 just wrapped up. They did something different this year. This time they dropped 3 episodes at a time almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 3.
Something like that.
It was a 4-week stretch, 3 episodes per Tuesday.
Yes. Yeah, which is interesting because that's something that's different than most series. Like usually they'll do either 3 at the beginning or 3 at the end, but this one specifically did it every week. So we wrapped it. It basically wrapped 12 episodes in 4 weeks, which is pretty crazy. But as everyone knows, Andor is the precursor to Rogue One. We already know the end of the story. We know where this goes, but this is that filler in the gaps. This is what Star Wars loves doing, this type of shit instead of doing new stories. But to their effect, Andor 1 was arguably one of the best Star Wars shows out of the Disney era. Shout out to Mando. But in terms of everything else, like it's been pretty much just Mando and Andor. So this is Andor season 2 wrapping up. They went into like a lot of different new territory. They broke a lot of old Lucas rules, which actually George Lucas thought was actually kind of cool too. But now that it's wrapped, like I said, we got all 12 episodes. What did you guys feel in general? How did you guys think it came across? We'll start with D first.
Okay, well, I'll start by talking about some of the good stuff because I did enjoy watching it towards the end. I thought the beginning there was a lot of filler, but for the most part, like you said, it ventured into new territory, breaking some of those rules that Lucas had previously had about, sex and profanity and, things like that, specifically sexual assault. So it was a very mature narrative. And I think one of the good things about the storytelling is that it takes us even further on the ground to see and feel how the Empire oppresses, right? And so I think was the best part of Andor season 1, and then it's wrapping up in season 2. They really show us through the Imperial Security Bureau as an antagonistic organization, and the main antagonist, Dedra Miro, how the level of power that Palpatine has exerted on the galaxy, and not just his power, but the proximity of that power, how it has allured all these people into believing in this dictatorship, this authoritarian government. So it takes all these real world themes, especially like what's going on right now, and it manages to incorporate them into a solid Star Wars story. Like you said, marching towards somewhere where we know at least an epic point where we know they're going. But in the meantime, they allow these characters to really shine in those character-driven moments. And this is probably the most gray area of all of the Star Wars stories, in characters like Luthen and Clea, and that they help build this Rebel Alliance by doing the dirty work that none of the others wanted to do, or their morality prevented them from doing. That's and not just in that kind of artificial way that we've seen in the past, or that very soft way, but in the legitimate way of, for example, Luthen telling Mon Mothma early on, I know that this guy is your friend, but he's about to crack and give us all up. So and you're too important for that. So yes, I'm going to remove him off from the board. And, it's you can think about it in the truest of ways, or you can just think about it vaguely, but it's going to happen, so they did a lot of good character work, and I thought that was what makes the show, what made the series work, and why it stood out. I like the restraint to get in, get out, tell the story that you want to tell. And I think I had issues with the pacing, but I think that 3-episode release helped with that, because you get to, they did it with each one sort of being a year in this, or a piece of a year, I should say. Star Wars. Who knows what time even means in Star Wars?
Time is a flat circle.
Right. So they did it in a way that at least grounded you and oriented you as to, as Josh pointed out, where we're marching to, which is the seminal point, which is the Battle of Yavin. But we're not going to see that here, because we know that happens in Return of the Jedi, and that's a long way from where they are. But all of those teases, I thought, was how you do it, just as an addition to it. And the last thing I'll say, the good stuff, how you do nostalgia without being overbearing with it. We go to Yavin 4, we have the references to the building of the Death Star and all that stuff, but we don't have to have a moment where, it's so obvious that it serves no purpose to the narrative. It's just there because it's reminding you of this scenario. So I thought that was, yeah, exactly. So those were my good points of the story. Excellent bringing Ben Mendelsohn back, and I think that continues the tradition of what I've grown to love about Star Wars, even when they're doing poorly, which is the actors involved enjoy coming back, and that makes for a consistency that, even if it's not quite in the narrative or in the mythology, it's at least consistent visually. They did have a kind of moment where that was broken, and obviously we'll talk about the Bail Organa situation. But for the most part, having Forrest Whitaker back as Saw, it just eats up the scenes that he's in. And he's just been coming back since Rogue One, and then they had him in Rebels, and so I like all of that, and I think that's what made it that season, this season, and this finale really good.
Yeah, Josh, what do you think?
Outside of the first 3 episodes, which I think could have been 1 episode, and even with my complaints about the first 3 episodes, at the very least, you walk away from those episodes realizing that they're establishing Yavin 4 first as a waypoint before it becomes the center of the Rebel Alliance. So even that had its purpose. But literally everything outside of that, I thought was extremely well done once you get past those first 3 episodes. I like that they maintain. I was telling D a couple days ago, I like that they've maintained the book chronology, like the book calendar of BBY 4, BBY 3. So that's literally 4 years before the Battle of Yavin, 3 years before the Battle of Yavin, and so on. But yeah, like I said, once you get past those 3 episodes, And there's some people who liked it. So I think, it depends on your personal whatever as far as the first three are concerned. But once you get past that, it gets moving, and it gets moving really, really well. I loved how they resolved Luthen's character. I loved how they resolved the Clea's character. I loved what they did with Bix. That was a nice surprise at the end. I loved how they basically park you at the end of the series. First of all, that walk through all of Yavin, all of the base at Yavin, the Massassi Temple at Yavin. That was a really good long shot. It gave you the impression that things were closing out. Like you were walked up to the idea that this was the end. And the fact that when he gets his orders, you realize he's getting the orders to meet with the guy that he meets with in the very first scene of Rogue One. I couldn't ask for better. Like it sealed it up perfectly. Literally, if you watch Rogue One, he's leaving to go to that meeting. I'm good. That you cannot ask for a better ending. Yeah, the tension of Clea going into the hospital to basically make sure that that Luthen doesn't get compromised. Man, that was heartbreaking. And the way that they sprinkled in the story of how those two met and how he sort of groomed her and how he came to becoming basically one of the founders of the Rebel Alliance, I thought was expertly told story. It was gripping. It was heartbreaking. It was everything. It was a bunch of things all bottled in one. So yeah, I didn't have a single. I want to say I had maybe one or two minor quibbles that I'm not even sure is worth mentioning because I also don't remember what they were. But yeah, for the most part,
what Josh just said about, I agree. That's a good point about Luthen because it just shows the large what they were trying to do and showing that the Rebel Alliance, not all of the heroes that were named and remembered were Luthen and Clea names would likely be those that will be forgotten from the larger story. Mon Mothma,
they're already forgotten by the time you get to Rogue One. Like they're not even mentioned.
And obviously we know on the behind the scene that's because
because they hadn't come up with the story.
Right, they hadn't created them. But it lends to what you just said, which is they don't have time. Andor doesn't have time to have a moment to be like, oh, remember Luthen or remember or Clea and all of that, because it's full throttle. They only had one shot at what they were doing in Rogue One, and it would cost them as it did. So that was just a great point to bring up about Luthen and Clea. And I also enjoyed that sequence in the hospital.
Oh man. Yeah, I did not realize how intently I was watching what I was watching until I realized I was gripping the arm of my chair because I was you genuinely don't know. The characters move on, right? But you don't know whether or not they live or die. They could just get swallowed into the larger rebellion and you just don't hear from them again. Their story's been told. So you don't know whether or not Clea buys it by the end of the series. So you're like, yo, is she gonna die too? Like Luthen's probably gonna die. Okay, cool. He tried to take his own life. So I get that, but not okay, cool. But you get that his time is up clearly, and he knew his time was up, but you don't know whether or not she's gonna make it. And that really just sort of grabs you by the throat and holds you the entire time she's in the hospital, man. It's just really well done, really well edited, really well written, really well acted. That whole bunch of the last 3 episodes especially definitely brought it home for me. I was thoroughly impressed and relieved of my worry with the first 3 episodes.
Yeah, I mean the first episodes were rough. I think that was the main thing where it's like if you're hyped up off of Andor, you rewatch the whole series just before you're about to watch season 2, and then you get the first 3 and you're like, what is going on? It gave me the same feeling as like
they could have just done it in one episode. Like you could have made the exact same point. the point of the first 3 episodes, as I saw it, was A, the rebellion is still very fractured. B, Yavin 4 is now coming into play, but it's not a base yet. It's a waypoint. C, whatever other third point that I was thinking of that just left me. But my point being, you could have made all of those points in 1, maybe 2 episodes. You did not need to have Cassian Andor stuck with that experimental X-wing TIE fighter interceptor. I know.
With that collection of idiots that had him in prison.
It felt like Heroes when they stuck Hero in the past for no reason for like 7 episodes, and it just derailed his whole what would you take your main character that everyone likes, you stick them in the past with a bunch of characters you never knew about, and you let them sit there for like 5 or 6 episodes, or it could also been like WandaVision, those first 3 episodes could have been 90 minutes and you've been fine. But anyway, sorry. Before we get off
things
tap,
up, sir. you wouldn't be bringing these things up. Because I had high hopes for Heroes.
We all did. We'll
do a Heroes retrospective.
We'll do a Heroes retrospective of the whole thing one day. Cam,
okay.
what was your positives for Andor?
I will not be doing a Heroes retrospective, first and foremost. Second of all.
But why? It was such a good show.
No need to go back.
Didn't you love it?
Nope. So, yeah. As far as Andor is concerned, this makes Rogue One a better movie, especially for Andor's character.
Mm-hmm.
Although I feel strongly that Andor or Rogue One is probably one of the better contemporary Star Wars films out there, it still had a lot of problems. I had issues with Andor's decision making prior to seeing Andor develop to who Andor is by the time Rogue One starts. One of the things I enjoyed was the growth of certain characters like Vel, Andor, Bix, her transformation from the beginning, middle, and end, because she was dealing with some PTSD and whatnot. Because this is a war story, right? These are war veterans. One of the things though that it didn't bug me, but it was just like, what's the difference between Saul Guerrero and I can't pronounce his name. Luthen. Their tactics are the same, right? But it seems like the Rebel Alliance looks at them both differently.
Well, I just
Saul was out of his mind.
But also, I think we got to recategorize it. I think this isn't a war yet. This is more Cold War prelude, whereas Saul is fighting a war because we've seen his history and lineage. He believes it's a war, but in truth, it's more of that. It's
not a war in the traditional sense that what we see throughout the movies, but there is a war going on or war brewing, and it's wartime movements. Like you have spies, you have intel, you have battles and stuff like that. So it's not war in the traditional sense, but they're fighting for something. They're trying to get intel. They're trying to fight this fascist group of individuals called the Empire, right? So I was just it was kind of throwing me off how the beginning of the Rebel Alliance looked at how Lutheran and Saul kind of differently. They're not on the point. They're not at the point where they look at Saul as like a terrorist, because they still work with him and they understand he is needed for this, because at this time it's the Rebel Alliance is fractured. It's separating the 3 entities. We got these undercover rogue spies. We got this quote unquote for lack of a better term, the Hamas of Star Wars, with Saul Guerrero freeing people and doing it by any means necessary and very ruthless at it, right? But I think, in my opinion, the characters of Saul and Lutheran are the same. They're trying to get to a means to an end by any means to free the people and get this real alliance going, because their backstories, they've seen the causes of the Empire doing it. We had a quick little backstory of Lutheran And we already know Saul how he got there. You can watch Rebels and see how he came to be and why he is like he is, you know. But that's just a small gripe. But overall, like I said, I like the growth of certain characters. Like I said, I like the development of how Andor grows as a character from not caring to caring, or like being there to understanding like this was too much. He had to take a step back, and then all of a sudden committing because he sees the greater good of his cause. What else? I do like the fact that I didn't like the fact that what's his name? Deidre Merrill's boyfriend. It was an anticlimactic ending. It kind of reminded me of The Wise Omar. Cyril.
I laughed really hard when that happened. I know that's mean to say, but I did laugh.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like a Omar getting shot up in a liquor store moment. Like, damn, you know what I'm saying?
How abrupt and
how abrupt
anticlimactic it was. Yeah.
Because, but at the end of the day, because I feel like even his character has some growth. I feel like he had a tinge of sympathism to what was going on.
Not a tinge. Like once he realized what they were doing, he was outraged. He was outraged that he was being used.
Yeah, but it wasn't
he was
because
outraged
he cared
once he realized what was going. No, well, yeah, no, not because it. And everything that was going on with him wasn't because he cared about whether or not there were people that were anti-empire. It was more what the empire is really trying to do once he figures at least that piece of it out, and then B, that he was used in order to make all of that happen. Like he kind of suggests that if Daedra had
if she'd been honest with him,
if she just told him, he probably would have been down out of love for her, if nothing else.
Also, I think to your point, it's he believed in the empire. Now I didn't like that character. I didn't like that character, but they established very much so that he was the one that believed in he's the company man. He believes in the company line.
He's a true believer. Yeah.
He's a true believer. But he also was a very weak individual who was used by his mother, who was used by Daedra. And by that time he had come to the point where, as like you said, it was a good character treatment because he's still that slime ball. Because he's like, you know, if you had been honest with me, I would have helped you do this. So he still has that proximity of power, as I mentioned, sensibility, but it was more so to his connection, replacing his mother with Daedra.
So, and there was moments where he grew some backbone, especially when he got the answers from Daedra about what was really going on. You saw him stand up. You saw that he made a conscious decision of not siding with Daedra and just going amongst the people. He was lost, but there was a little bit of change in him. But overall, he realized that the company was not as cool as he thought it was, but it was too late for him, right? The one thing I did like too, I didn't even realize it, that they switched out Bail Organa because Benjamin Bratt is playing Bail, and I forgot it was Jimmy Smits. I didn't mind that because I was like, please don't CGI any character that doesn't belong in there. Just replace it. I'm cool with that.
Well, yeah, because he's supposed to be younger, so it makes sense that you replace the actor.
Yeah, but he wasn't there because I think it was scheduling conflicts. But I'm just glad they didn't do a Luke Skywalker CGI effect. It's just to get him in there.
Oh yeah.
Just replace the character. So I'm
Benjamin Bratt doesn't look too off from Jimmy.
Bro, I didn't even notice it until like I was like, wait a minute, that ain't him. So I didn't it was cool. It worked. I just wasn't paying that much attention, and that just goes to show you that the casting was cool and it wasn't a big deal. It didn't throw me off.
And they didn't use him that much, even though Bail Organa he needed to be there because he's one of the leaders of when it becomes the Rebel Alliance. I think it's important to make that distinction, as we saw in Rebels, that there are different periods in which this thing exists. It's just like in Andor season 1. It starts off as, I forget what they call it, the network or the axis or something like that. Where they're just trying to do their espionage, gather intel, and build behind the scenes thing. But by the end of that, it's a full blown. They have a military and a fleet. They can actually fight the Empire.
Right.
And at the end of this, I'll say this. The one thing I did find funny, and I think I talked to you guys offline about this, is that when everything's said and done, and they're rewarding Luke and Han Solo and Leia for being the rebels that stood out, I was like, wait, what about all those other people that we've minimized that we don't? Obviously, this wasn't written in, but it's just funny now when you go look back at those movies. And you're like, oh, these are the rebels? Nah, this was like...
Well, it could be posited post-mortem. It could be posited that those are the people who weren't looking for credit. Like, they weren't looking to blow up a Death Star. They were just looking to,
I'm just saying,
sort of to help and destabilize, so it makes a certain degree of sense that they're not the face of the rebellion and lauded as, you know, medal worthy heroes because they were in the background.
I think it's a happy accident.
It is a happy accident, and I think it's just the proximity of where those characters who were involved were. Luke was on the Death Star.
Yeah,
you can't. He destroyed the first.
You can't get more involved than that.
Right. I mean, it's the way they're written into it. You know, they did the big things. Yes, those other folks, and I think that's the reason why you can have an Andor or Rebels and these side characters and not have to feel so bad, is because, again, had they been in those situations, had Ahsoka been able to maneuver her way and get back into that place, that's probably the one that's the most, you know, stretched in terms of her inactivity. But if right place, right time is what I mean. Luke's destiny was always sort of going to put him there. Same with Leia. So there was, and then, you know, Han is the only one that. No, you're right. It's
because I'm like, yo, this Rebel Alliance was way deeper than just them. How they got to that point was based off these minor characters that did a lot of work and laid the foundation of getting just the intel of how this thing is coming around to be minimalized in a bigger movie. But it wasn't by fault of nobody. It just happened.
No, I get what you're saying.
You know, it's just funny. When you look at that scene, you're like, hold on, man. There's a hell of more people that's involved in this.
Yeah.
It's not about the
when you
credit.
watch Rebels. Even when you watch Rebels, like how can Hera not be in the Phoenix Squadron and all of that they gave?
Right.
Because if Ezra doesn't take Thrawn out of this galaxy, if Thrawn was there with Thrawn, Vader, and Tarkin and on the field, they wouldn't have had a shot.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have had a shot.
And
but
it's important to note that, of course, it's important to note in the books, Thrawn by himself nearly took everything down. Thrawn, Vader, and Palpatine all at the same time? No way. It's not even a story to tell at that point. Unless you want to just tell a really dope Thrawn story about how they win.
My last thing about Cyril. This goes to tell, even in real life, hey, man, take your sick days because your job don't care about you. As soon as you fuck up, they putting you in the gulag. You see that? The Empire got put in the gulag. Take your sick days.
Oh, man.
Oh, look at that. I was going
to say with in general is just like the one part that I would say too is this kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, where it's just like, you know, this whole show started off of a line in the very first Star Wars in 1978.
Yep.
Many Bothan spies gave their lives to get us this intel. Like that one line produced all of these other stories. But they the way I liked about it for Rogue and for Andor is they treated it like a war, right? And a lot of the war stories, if you watch any of the old school like documentaries on World War II, World War I, Vietnam, like all the Ken Burns joints, or if you read one of those books, there's like it's littered with all of these people that did all these things that you'll never know about unless you actually open the book and find out. They might have done something that, you know, everyone that was around George Washington, they were just as important as George Washington, but we only hear about him. And I think that I like that they kept that tenor for Andor with that. They're like, yo, it took a lot of us to get to where you guys to this. So before all that, here are their stories. And like you said, you know, we only know about Luke and all that kind of stuff, but we don't know about Luthen. We don't know about any of these people that did all the dirty work and all that, you know, the assassinations and all this randomness. So I think that where Rogue One succeeded when it first came out was that gut punch of like, yeah, that's cool, you know the story, but this is how it got there, and that's why everybody was so shocked by it, because they're like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. There must have been a bazillions of different stories to get us to the spot that we know of.
Yeah,
and I mean, at the end of the day, you know, we individually and as a group have always said, you know, it'd be nice to have a Star Wars story about how the Empire impacts the everyday man, just the regular everyday person going about their business. And I think you got that with how things turned out at the end of season 1 with Ferrix. You got you got that with I'm forgetting, with Gorman. And I think you there were, and it wasn't just like, oh, this is the beginning of the rebellion. Oh, no, this is the beginning of the rebellion. They're all flashpoints, and they're positioned as flashpoints so that you see that most of the places where the Empire landed and didn't already have a presence and sort of just weaseled their way. Oh no, we just, you're the fashion capital of the universe. We just want to hang out here for a little while. Meanwhile, they want to mine the place dry to the point where they know that it's going to be uninhabitable by the time they've gotten everything they need to get out of the planet. But the people are inconsequential to them, and that's the thing you need to. I think that you mind about as much story as you're going to get out of it now, but I think previously it was waiting to be. It was story potential that was waiting to be tapped, and I think if you look at Star Wars from that standpoint going forward, there's more stories to tell. It's a big galaxy far, far away. Like you could. There's loads of planets. Like the one thing that I'm looking forward to with Maul is apparently Maul has an apprentice. Cool, another person that we don't know. Yay! I don't want to see stories about all these characters that we know that we've seen all this stuff about and had all this history with.
And I think that's the thing with
I think that Maul qualifies for that now, though, because we've seen quite a few things where Maul now at this point.
Can I be honest?
But if we're tapping into the syndicate, that hopefully unveils a whole other host of characters we know nothing about, and that Maul is just the center point.
I think that's the thing too, where it's like Rebels was good at doing that, where like, the first, 6 or 7 episodes, it was like, hey kids, everything was brighter in tone and everything and all that. Then Clone Wars. Then once it started to introduce the legacy characters, then boom, it really hit its stride and then started to expand on everything. We saw more about the Mandalorian, saw more about Maul, we saw more about all these different things. And so it's like you said, it's a big ass galaxy. And like, I think that if Disney actually like enjoys playing in this galaxy, we could have fun stories. Unfortunately, like you said, we are always stuck within the same paradigm of the freaking the Skywalker family and whatnot. But at least for Andor, like you said, we've been talking about this forever, right? Even before Andor even got announced, we're just like, yo, just give me Star Wars without Skywalker, and we'll be happy, and we'll be fine, and we can go from there.
Well, we did go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go for it.
I was going to say, we did get glimpses of that with potential with Finn's character from this point of view of a stormtrooper. We had the potential to do that. No, I'm saying when it was introduced, we was we're going to get a story about a stormtrooper and their day-to-day life. That's what I thought, right?
Gotcha.
We have Bad Batch. We have all these other stories, Andor, Mandalorian, the other characters that don't wield a lightsaber or use the Force. Cool. I'm going to be completely honest. When I started watching this, I completely forgot what the hell was going on in this show.
I did too.
I was just like, I don't know if it's because I'm so far removed, but you have to, for me, I would have to watch the first season all over again to like understand what was going on, because I totally forgot characters. I totally was lost. All I know is
recap. You can watch the recap.
I mean, even then, I was just like, what the heck? Like, who is who? It was just, I just didn't feel like I was brought up to speed, but that's on me. That's something I have to do on my own. It's just one of those things where I was just like, what the hell is going on? And it wasn't until like episode 4, I was like, okay, I got a better understanding of who these characters are. Because I remember, what's his name? Brasso, who got killed trying to escape. they like kind of forgot about him after he died. But like I was like, who the hell is this dude? I was like, oh, that's his homie from work that escaped with him when he was doing construction. Like it took me a minute to piece together. So that was my. I don't know if that's on them or on me not doing the homework of just recapping, because it was like I was just trying to figure out what was what and what was going on again.
If you go back and probably watch season 1 and season 2 and then Rogue One, it'll be fine. But it's because we have those big breaks between these seasons that you that stuff. I didn't remember any of that, which is the reason why in the first 3 episodes I was a little bit, and that's on them. But in the first 3 episodes, I was a little disoriented. And that's why I was very annoyed with those idiots who captured him, because it was just this, it felt like I had stepped out of this really serious, cool Star Wars story that they were telling and into some kind of circus freak show or something like that. Not even a freak show, or a circus sci-fi thing. You know, like, I don't know what they were. I didn't get why this was a necessary part of the story. I just didn't.
Yeah, you could have played circus music right behind it. Right behind all 3 of those episodes. The soundtrack could have just been.
I take it back.
You place whatever there and it'll work the same as long as it's humorous.
They did.
What are you taking back?
They did bring some elements of the Force with the Force healer, but that's just to give Andor a reason to believe somewhat in the Force when he sees Donnie Yen's character in Andor 1, because he was off put by the Force. Because I was like, why is she there? Like, and I was like, okay, maybe this is give some credence to why he has some semblance of believing who this person is that's on his team in Rogue One. Because
I think I agree with that, but I just think it's just they just can't help themselves.
Yeah.
Honestly,
no, it's fine. It's a major pillar of.
I understand that. What I'm saying is, if you didn't have it there, it would not have made a difference either way.
Nope.
Between Andor season 2 or Rogue One. That's all. That's what I'm saying. You don't. If you truly want to move away from it, then move away from it, because it doesn't involve him. And this is what I'm talking about with my criticism as far as time and space goes in Star Wars. You're telling me that in 30 years everybody forgot about the Jedi? You're telling me that in 30 years, all of that, thousands of years of history, I get it, it was wiped away. I get that part, but it still exists in living memory. Okay,
right,
30 years well, again, I can't say that it's not long enough for that to happen, because I don't know what constitutes as 30 years in Star Wars. I don't know. Is it 10,000 days around a twin sun? Like, I don't know.
So to that point, now that we got into the parts that we enjoyed about it, let's get to the nitty gritty of those aspects of it. Like, one thing that's always going to be prevalent, which is what D just said, is like Star Wars logic is their overall weakness / logic is always time. Because what is time in Star Wars? It's always this weird conflux of different things. Things are at different areas, blah, 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 blah. So you really, even when they say 1 year, I'm also like, is it a year? Or is it like, they don't really know.
Has it really been just a couple weeks?
Yeah.
Exactly. There's no concept of time.
We measure time based on the rotation of the sun, the sun moving around Earth, or whichever one, vice versa. That is how we measure our day, and we know that the sun each planet does its rotation at different speeds, right? So if you're on, and based on its
at different speeds and different distances,
right, and also based on their density or their size, because Jupiter, it takes a longer time to do its full complete rotation, right? My point being is that we're our individual ages on this planet, but we go further into the solar system, we would be a different age, right? Because the sun would be, if we're measuring time dilation the same way. What I'm saying is we have nothing like that to reference, because it is a galaxy far, far away. So we don't
for a series based in 1978, it probably gets a little muddier than they want to get, because Then you have like the closer to the sun, the planets closer to a star system's sun have longer or shorter days because of the rotation. Their rotations are different, and you know, the further away you get from the sun, then you know their days are longer, and so their years are longer, and all of that. That's something that I think you or I would write, but I don't think that Lucas really wanted to get into. I don't call that getting in the weeds, because
I get what you're saying.
Science. It's science.
I get what you're saying.
But,
well, then Andor, do not put a whole full screen placard up that says 1 year later, because now I think about that. BBY. It's not a year. It's not a regular year. BBY still implies that it is a passage of time. That's my point.
Yes. Okay.
In the narrative, it's a passage of time, and that is undefined in Star Wars. That's my point. Yeah. You can ignore it if you so choose to, but it's still there.
Yeah. And I think that's
because they definitely, and they didn't do that in season 1. So like when Andor goes on his little vacation and he gets scooped up by a K2 unit, and ends up getting arrested. We don't know how long he's in jail. We don't know how long time passed between whatever initial mission he was on for the rebels that he originally met before he goes on vacation. You know, we don't know how long he was on vacation, like none of that. So that was why to be fair, right. So to be fair, if you're going to do that in season 1, don't do it in season. Don't go away from that in season 2. Fair enough.
Exactly.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that's my point.
That would have been better. That would have been better if it was just like time passed it and then whatever. Because like I like that in season 1, you didn't really know what the time period was. You just knew it was before Rogue One. And then you were just letting the time go as it goes. And then in season 2, with these jumps, it was like a year later, this year, like, wait a minute, this doesn't fit. Like, it was jarring. And it kind of took you out a little bit, but then you still had to figure it out. So I could see, like, again,
that's fair.
Time is a flat circle.
It didn't bother me. Wow. It didn't bother me because I've chosen to ignore the time logic in Star Wars. I just know I knew where it was going. Like I know the end destination, so it didn't bother me. And it felt like it was just a timer to the big battle. Just saying, hey, we're this close.
Yeah.
But the one thing I wanted to comment about not having the Force healer. Vader walks the planet right now. We know that some type of the Force exists. That goes without saying because we know the movies. They know the movies. They know Vader is a Force user. So we need the Force healer to have him open up and say, hey, this is going to make me believe in the Rebel Alliance because of this bigger purpose. Because that's
what do you mean? Is Vader, you talking about the audience or people in the world?
In other words, Vader exists.
Vader exists in this world.
Oh, he does. But remember, Vader isn't seen that much. Especially by people on that level. Like, he's not seen like that. Okay, so then
I'll take that back because I'm assuming the rumors of the Vader going around being the enforcer.
Right, Palpatine's enforcer. Yeah, that's a fair, I'd say that's a fair statement.
But maybe not still on their level though. Would that reach?
He's a myth. He's the myth that comes. It's the myth that walks in the door before he does. So he may never see him.
That's fair. I'm just on the assumption that once Vader has been.
Well, we're adding things in there that isn't even present in the story.
What I was trying to say is that I agree with D'Angelo. We didn't need the Force healer to convince Andor to be who he is because he had all this other stuff to convince him to be who he is with his missions, his outlook on Lutheran, his outlook on the Alliance, with his own eyes of what he saw, how he made his conclusion of like trying to get away from Lutheran and then coming back into the fold. The Force healer was just nostalgic, like, oh, I'm going to magically do something to make you believe. And I thought about it. I was like, maybe this will make sense. His connection when he sees Johnny Yen's character, whose name I cannot pronounce right, as the character in Rogue One, to believe in this Force, because he could be looking at him like, all right, buddy, you're blind, whatever. I don't believe in that. I just thought maybe that was connection. But again, it could have been said, it could have been done without using that element of the Force. Because like I said, what we all been trying to clamor for is we want them to get away from the Skywalker saga and all those elements, or just tell a different stories. We should know that Jedis existed. We know about the lightsabers. They're in that world or were in that world at one point. we can still tell stories without it, and it can still be just as interesting, which we found out with Andor throughout the whole entire season 2. And then they brought that Force thing at the last couple episodes, and I was like, okay, we didn't really need this, but it's fine. It's a small little detail, like they had to put it in. Cool, whatever. It's not a big deal, but I'm just saying they didn't need it.
You know, it like you say, you didn't need it, and I think if you're going to sprinkle it in, then sprinkle it in. Don't make it like a weird cameo, because it did kind of fly in out of nowhere. And in so much as there are Jedi and Sith Force users, there are also Force sensitives, like Chirrut Imwe, who was played by Donnie Yen as a guardian of the Wills. And there's all sorts of in between, like there are Sith Force sensitives, there's Sith practitioners who have more of the sorcery side than they do the Force side of things. So there's lots of in between, but I guess to D'Angelo's point, which I will confess I get, it didn't bother me. I actually liked it, but to his point, if you're gonna have him in there, have him in there. Like, don't just flirt with the idea of it. There could have been some sort of less subtle mention that they exist and they're out there, and then Cassian has it could be a line of dialogue, one line of dialogue. It could be a line of dialogue where, Cassian is like, that whole Force jazz, can we not talk about that? I don't even mess with that junk. Like, it's a myth. It's not even real. And that establishes two things. One, his disdain for the more spiritual aspects of the Force. And then two, it also establishes they're already, just to D'Angelo's earlier point about how they're, if 30 years have passed since the fall of the Jedi, you need to either make it so that you need to establish where the understanding in society is of what the Jedi used to be. Are they a myth? Are they like, man, I wish the Jedi were still here. These guys in the Empire wouldn't blah, 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 blah. You could establish it in a bunch of different ways, but if you're going to flirt with it in season 2, you establish it in season 1, that there are people who still believe that the Jedi are out there and that good exists and the Force will blah, 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 blah. But if you just jam it in there, it feels jammed in there.
And it goes back to if you take that scene out, does that do anything for Andor's character? And at
the end of the day, no.
Yeah, like Cam said, he had all of this stuff that already pushed him to why he's doing his thing. We didn't need that part. Mm-hmm. And I think
or you put it in there and you minimize it because that's the corner of the world in which it can be minimized. If she's and Andor is a soldier, he's on a boots on the ground person. Bix telling him all that stuff, I didn't know. I'm like, okay, where's this coming from? And then what I thought his response would be that may be true, all of what you're saying, maybe but that's not going to help us win this war. At least I can't see how it will. So I'm walking away. That would have been to me a little bit more, or like what Josh said before, magic. I don't put my faith in magic. I put my faith in people.
So here's the thing. What Bix was trying to say, did she know she was pregnant then? Where did this come from? Type of deal. Because then I was like, okay, because I agree with you. Why was Bix saying all this all of a sudden? Because she was all over the place.
She could have just always been a believer, and that is the first time that it's come up. It could go in a bunch of different directions. But
it was never established is the whole
Thank you.
point.
I'm just about to say, if you don't establish it prior, then it just flies in out of nowhere like everything else in that scene did.
Yeah, she was like, I want to settle down. That's why when they were in, was it Coruscant? Or not Coruscant, but in the city where they had that safe house, they dressed the house up because they wanted she was like, I want to settle in kind of deal. And Andor was like, nah, we got to keep fighting. Then all of a sudden,
at one point he was they both flipped. At one point, after the passage of time, he was ready to choose that life that she wanted, but then she leaves and says, I made the choice for us because I know that basically saying that the rebellion needs him, which that's true in a very interesting way because the rebellion did need him. But unfortunately, what they needed from him ended his life. And so And so,
well, and to the point, and I guess to her point, knowing that she was pregnant, she didn't want to make him choose them over what it's clear he's supposed to be doing. And then B, she doesn't want to raise a kid in a rebellion.
Well, hold on.
In
So
war.
back up. So, but when they had that safe house in the city, she was mentioning it felt like she wanted to settle down at that point in time. And Andor was like, nah, I'm still,
because that was a significant point. That's before it was
because
about
they'd gone so long. They
and
they had these stretches in between missions and conflicts where they were just kind of sitting there waiting for word from Luthen on the next thing to do.
Yeah.
And so they got to settle into more domesticated lifestyle as opposed to being these warlords and saboteurs on the run.
And we saw that when they went into the store and she had a rapport with one of the store clerks. And he was like, well, I haven't seen you guys in a while. And she started getting used to that part. So
so now they're not hiding, but that time, and I think that was the sort of focus of that interaction. That time was starting to dwindle more and more, where they would be able to take a walk amongst people and not have to run for their lives or fight and win or die. And that's what we see transition. We see that slowly become the case for their world after each of those three, with the year jumps or whatever, to the point at the end where everything, all the stakes are sort of laid bare, and it wasn't even safe. I think at first I was unsure about the way they resolved the main antagonists, Partagas and Didra and all of them. But then you think about it, it all makes sense. All of them were in it and invested in the empire. But just like any typical authoritarian regime and the machine that created it, once they're no longer useful in that cog, they become immediately expendable. All of them ended up meeting a fate that represented that. Dedra's used as a scapegoat. Partagas is going to be killed clearly if he had left that room. There was going to be he and Krennic knew, and we know what Krennic's fate is about to be, and he got grinded by the machine too. In fact, the last thing he saw was his machine, was his invention killing him. So it's, and the same thing with Deirdre. She ends up being ensnared, and she was doing things like a rebel. And the irony was that she was not being a rebel. And that's why I love, and again, Ben Mendelsohn is great in almost everything he does. He brings a different type of intensity to Krennic. And so when he came in there and he's interrogating her, when he put his finger on top of her head, I was like, even that simple gesture made it. He's like, say the name. I was like, whoa, this dude is like, and that in and of itself was just another way that they showed just what Palpatine had created in those corrupt senators because if you think about it, all of the planets that ironically formed the basis of the rebellion were former separatist planets. And that's because all of the Galactic Republic planets, immediately when he turns it over, they were Empire planets already in systems, but the separatists weren't. They're the ones that they then had to conquer. So a lot of the planets that we see in these other stories are the ones that were formerly of the separatists that walked away from the corruption of, or no, not even quotes, the corruption of the Republic, because they saw the end game, which was what Palpatine did.
So I see two things.
I think
two things wrong. This will be quick. Two things when you're working for the Empire. One, take your sick days. Two, ambition will get you killed.
It's true.
All of those people that died had ambitions, plans.
Oh yeah,
the machine ate itself. Yeah,
proximity to power.
Machine,
yeah,
and the machine ate
especially. And the crazy thing about this, they kind of moving like Sith. They take an underling bring him up, and the underling tries to take over and get that spot, and it never goes well.
It's totally the Bainite. It's totally the echoes of the Bainite Sith, and I think that is both an accident in some stories, but also in the main story. It's when you see the details of the Empire, you can see that it operates like the old Sith Empire, except there's just less, not as much publicized carnage and death. But it's the same thing, except now you only have two Sith Lords. You have the Apprentice and the Dark Lord of the Sith, and by the time Palpatine takes over, he gets an apprentice who's pure rage and power, but who has no desire to supplant him. Vader has no desire until Luke to supplant him.
And I think that's the coolest part about the Vader and Palpatine situation is just like Vader's a pure weapon. He has no ambition outside of being a weapon and destruction, and that's why it works so well.
Rage.
And so then, and then until he has something to actually care for, right? Oh wow! Now he has Luke and Leia. Now it changes his whole perception, which is awesome in terms of a narrative switch. Where, like you said, in the Empire, especially for Andor, every person that was in the Empire, they were all super ambitious, and their ambition got them killed. And like they tried to go a little bit outside of what they were getting, and then all of a sudden they got chopped down, or they put the wrong place at the wrong time, and then they get an anticlimactic death kind of a thing.
And all in
rapid succession.
Yeah, and we see everybody's big boss take them down a peg or two. In the first season, Partagaz was the man, and then he dealt with Dedra and all of them. Now here comes Krennic, and Krennic is the man in that situation, and he tears them up. Now you go to Rogue One, Tarkin and Vader is turned into him. so
and I think
each level.
There's two things that jump out at me. How Partagaz basically, like, the dude comes in and he's like, they're waiting for you, just so you know what that means, right? And he's like, just give me a minute. That's something I want to take care of before I come into the room. And dude sits down at his desk and offs himself. And dude knows he's going to off himself. And he stands outside the room and outside of his office. And when he shoots himself, the stormtroopers are like, yo, we got to roll in. He's like, nope, it's fine.
But that's kind of, that felt like a respect thing. Like he knew the end game was done. He was like, at least he gave him another way out, because he knew that if he went in,
if you don't do it, we're going to do it. Right.
Well, think about when the ominous day. Now, who's hired in Partagaz? It's Krennic, right? So we know where Krennic is headed. So it's not him. So it's either Tarkin
or Vader. Yep.
Or an
100%.
Inquisitor. Or it's an Inquisitor. But at that
more
point,
likely,
all of the Inquisitors were pretty much spread out to dead.
Yeah.
So it's more than likely, just like Krennic had to go to Mustafar, Partagaz was on his way to Mustafar, and he did not want that because he didn't think he was going to leave.
So my second thing that I liked was, and I hope I hoped that they would do it, and they did, was you see the real-time dissolving of the Senate. Not the way that I envisioned it.
I love that.
Because the way that it's always implied, at least in the books, and again, we're not really dealing with the books, so they do what they want, but the way that it's implied in a lot of the external non-TV and film media, it was implied that over time, Palpatine exerted a certain level of, because he was the only dark side user for for a little while, he was able to exert the full will of the dark side over the entire Senate. So everyone is beginning to now agree with him and just come around to his way of thinking, unless you have a strong will, which is always the thing with succumbing to the ways of the Force. If you're strong-willed, then you're not going to just fall for somebody going, you didn't see anything. Like, that's not going to work on you. And the people like the Mon Mothma
were not strong-willed. Like we saw that in Clone Wars. So it was easy for him to do what he did, but there were holdouts, like Josh pointed out.
Right. And I mean, so to Dee's point, the Mon Mothmas and the Bail Organas of the world, those people are not going to be swayed because their convictions are so strong, and they're very strong-willed people. They're very individualistic in that way.
And they still control entire star systems. And that
exactly.
was the whole thing. And that's why, adding to Josh's point, because we're like the Star Wars, like we go down the Star Wars, but added to his point, when you think about Tarkin's line, when he comes in and he says the Imperial Senate is no longer a problem, the Emperor just dissolved that last remnant of the old Republic. Why did he do that? Because he got the Death Star. Now it don't matter. It don't matter how many star systems they control. It doesn't matter if he is like, no, that's not gonna. Your vote doesn't matter. There's no need.
What you have to say isn't even remotely important anymore, because
but it took him that
and,
long to make the Senate obsolete is my point, and that's why the Death Star was so important the entire time.
And in the books, they further imply that when he dissolves the Senate, the senators are like, "Yeah, sure, totally, you can run the whole thing," like happily giving him power, which further sort of props up the argument that when he finally did get the chancellorship and then elevated himself to emperor, he was already exerting hold over the Senate, and to the point where he was able to do what he wanted, including dissolving the Senate and them happily obliging, like, yes, you can absolutely, you're the best ever. So yes,
and Plagueis also started that as well in that Plagueis novel. If you ever get a chance to read that, you'll see just how he and Sidious worked the Galactic Senate, because he had retreated from the public
life.
Period. Yeah, as Plagueis controlled part of the banking clan. That's where his money came, because there's the Sith, the Banite Sith lineage, where they inherit all the wealth that started with Bane. So that's thousands of years that I think some of it has gotten lost over time and different things have happened. But the main thing that they've kept is Revan's holocron, which Revan actually started the whole floating the notion of the rule of two. Like, Revan was the first one that's like, no, we need just one Dark Lord.
We need to consolidate power.
Yeah, it can't be just shared like this. We're not the Jedi and we can't exist. But Revan had his sort of, he could never get it together. And so Bane
and by that you mean he vacillated back and forth. He was light, then dark, then light again.
Then he disappears and he's a Mandalorian. Right. Like Revan was just some of everything. But they still had his holocron. Even Palpatine had his holocron. And even though Revan went back and forth, Revan wrote the blueprint, the draft. Bane molded it more, perfected it as to where it should be, and Palpatine executed it. But this happened over thousands of years.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about Bane, for the people who don't know, Darth Bane is the flashpoint and originator for executing the rule of the two, where the Sith are concerned. At his point in time, they're handing out Darth titles like gummy bears, and so everybody in
they had lost the Darth titles. They
gave it out, right, but they were Dark Lords. Right. Yes.
Yeah, they were all Dark Lords, and they just didn't use they were trying to be more like the Jedi Order, and so they dropped the Darth title because that echoed a time where it was like dog eat dog. Like, everybody that if you had a Darth title and you were a Sith Lord, you were vying to be the Dark Lord of the Sith. So in order to do that, you had to kill the other Sith Lords.
Right. And so at that point, it was really just Dark Lords, and everybody was a Dark Lord. Where when Bane realizes that if you follow the actual original tenets of the Sith, there's one Dark Lord, there's one Darth, and then everybody else after that falls under. And you can give them whatever titles you want, but at the end of the day, they all are subordinate to the one Dark Lord of the Sith. And that's it. And that guy has the Darth title. And so Bane is the one who sort of reorganizes. Well, by reorganizes everything, we really mean he kills everyone.
Yes, he kills Jedi and Sith all alike in one shot. In one shot, he kills thousands all of the Sith.
Yes, yes, he kills all the Sith and thousands of Jedi.
And thousands of Jedi. All the Sith except himself and thousands of Jedis. Crazy stories.
So
all
now,
yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say these are all these stories that were in the books and the stuff that's what they call it non-canon now because Disney owns it or whatever. But like
Legends is what they refer to it as.
Tell you to go read like the Marvel comics that have Star Wars is really good. There's a bunch of novels that have that's with Bane. There's Thrawn.
All of the Drew Crypt is a Crypt?
Let's be clear. We want you to read all of the novels before A Force Awakens. Anything that came out before Force Awakens, go read it. Just read it all. It's great.
I will say they do slip some non-canon stuff, little Easter eggs in there that you'll find. Yeah, like they did it in
Andor.
They did it in Andor. They did it in Han Solo, where he walked to some area and it was scribbled. One of the Jedi is from like when it was non-canon. Jedi that was lost. So I was like, they don't blatantly do it, but what these directors are trying to do is trying to say we do want the stuff that you consider non-canon in this world, and they'll slip little.
What they're doing is they're cherry picking. It's not even that they don't want it; it's that they're cherry picking what they want to use and repurposing it like Thrawn. Thrawn is his story is vastly different. They pretty much nailed the persona of Thrawn pretty perfectly.
But 100%. They got the character right. Yes.
Yeah. They nail the persona, even if they have him doing different things. Because Thrawn originally shows up after Palpatine in the books. He originally shows up after Palpatine has been deposed, and I think it's like 8 or 9 years after Return of the Jedi, when Thrawn comes back from the outer regions, from the outer realm, and he just assumes that everything is the way that he left it, only to find the Emperor has been deposed, Vader's dead. Some kid named Luke Skywalker blew up the first Death Star. There was a second Death Star he knew nothing about. So
there's all these Imperial warlords out there running around.
Yeah. And so everybody's sort of vying for the top spot. And he deads all of that. He's like, listen, I'm not even trying to run the show. I just want the Empire back to where it was when I left. Y'all can figure out who's going to lead, who's going to run it. You want to figure out who's going to be Emperor? Cool. I'm the leader of your military. And right now, I'm the highest ranking Imperial official anywhere. So you're going to do what I say until everything is set back to normal. I have no designs on leadership. That's for y'all politicians to figure out. And so he basically scoops up everybody that's left and consolidates everybody back under the Imperial flag. And they carve a path through the entire galaxy straight to Coruscant.
Yep.
And come within an inch of taking it all back.
Yeah. And it's a cool ass story too.
The Era of the Empire, definitely a cool story. A lot of those are really good. We were talking about it in one of the mistakes that they made. Well, many mistakes in the sequel trilogy, but it was all right there. It was all right there for you because Luke decided to build the new Jedi Academy, which was supposed to be not like the Jedi Order. It learned from those mistakes. We're going to be actual peacekeepers. We're not going to be a policing arm of the Republic anymore. No more. So they got that right in Force Awakens, that Luke did separate the Jedi from the Republic, but he did build a new academy with new Jedi Knights, and they went about going, and his nieces and nephews became Jedi Knights, and Luke never would have tried to pre-murder someone because
they turned. He'd be like, all right, well, you got to go. He'd kick him out. But he wouldn't try to
they try to fight him and kill other.
Yes,
but he's not gonna just try to murder them. Like that was we're getting all of that. But the point is, all of this stuff is out there for Disney. And going back to Andor, you could tell that the writers and the producers carved out as much as they could that didn't involve Jedi, Force, Luke, the mention of Skywalker, the mention of Vader. Palpatine is mentioned because you have to mention him because he is the Emperor. He is the person that
he's the overarching,
He is the overarching antagonist of the entire thing. So no matter where you are, if you're in that stretch between the Phantom Menace and even the Mandalorian era, he's the posthumous overarching antagonist because everything he put into play is still out there causing ruckus in the galaxy. So, when you look at all that, all of these stories are there for them to tell. They don't have to keep going in. So Andor, they carved out a space where they could tell a really good story, and it didn't have to involve any of those players, but it just enhanced what they did. In Rogue One at the end, for that last 5 minutes, really, Vader is one of the main characters, is switched to his point of view. I argue when he goes off on those rebels, that's all from his point of view because Jyn, Erso, and Andor are dead now, and the last thing we see it, that's all from his point of view, and it's all meant to say they just got their first big win on the Empire, so much so that now the Emperor has to put his top attack dog on them.
Yeah. I agree. And I think that's the thing that's different too, because, much to what we're talking about with Vader, like Vader is there, but he's more of a myth. So everyone that's in the top brass of the Empire knows who he is. But like you said, boots in the ground, they don't know that there's that Palpatine has a Sith Lord as his little guy under him or anything like that until it needs to be happening. And then when the rebels get their first win, that's when Vader shows up, and then the game changes. Now Vader's hunting these people actively.
Even then, when you get to A New Hope, when they have that first roundtable meeting of all the Moffs, and it's Vader and Tarkin running the meeting, even then they don't know what Vader's capable of. They just say, you're a practitioner of a dead religion. The Jedi are no more, and then clamp somebody by the neck like, fam, you sure you want to talk? You want to talk spicy to me right now, my guy? So even then, Vader is a myth and sort of like he's an unknown entity. Like they don't even know what he's capable of.
I guess I've been spoiled by like the one-off comics of how Vader's been around some galaxies, and like, ain't nobody got like a underground, like, yo, I was just on this planet and I seen this wildin' ass Jedi. Like,
well, that's the whole thing. If you are in proximity to see it, then chances are you will not live through it. Like that's the whole thing.
Well, to his credit, I mean, I don't know, I can't even think of the timeline of when this, but there's people who've escaped Vader's claws. And I'm just like, there wasn't no telegram saying like, yo.
Well, but who would believe it though? I mean, like, at that point,
so in the comics, so like the one thing I will say for Disney in this Disney era of Star Wars, the Marvel comics of Star Wars is actually really good. If you pick it up, it's worth it. It's super fun. It expands on a lot of stuff. When the time that I was working at Marvel, one of the things I found out, which was really cool, was like any Star Wars writer that gets to do a book, they have to run their notes by the Lucas people that have the keepers of the vault. But to their credit, most times they were like, yeah, go ahead, have at it, enjoy. And so
and the only reason I say this,
actually happened.
The only reason I say this is because one of my biggest gripes about the Han Solo show is like, yo, this man has not changed his look in 30 years. And no one has a hologram. This dude was a general, and y'all looking for him. All y'all got to do is just point the picture up. So when you see him, this dude looks like General Kenobi. Like, what the hell? Y'all don't know who this is? Like,
I
come
mean,
on, man.
that's the Star Wars logic. I mean,
Yeah.
Obi-Wan Kenobi couldn't remember
Oh,
R2D2
man.
for a second, but he remembered everything else, but the one droid who was like the most important droid during the Clone Wars and everything else. So it's just those little things that were not considered when these things were originally sat down and put pen to paper.
I will also say this too about oh my God, Mon Mothma. I think her role, especially after Andor and what we know about her scene that hit the cutting room floor, she is just as important as Obi-Wan.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
She's just as important as who else? Leia. I think she is one of those characters. Like, what is the term they use in Marvel? The Wolverine was his
yeah. It's one of those. It's the they're a character that's super important. Like if they're off the map, they're off the map. The whole thing.
Yeah, Andor gave Mon Mothma her rank up here of how important she was to this whole thing, in my opinion.
Yeah,
that's just my opinion about 100%. It. For her,
no, that's a fact.
Yeah,
that's a fact. She financed. She at least partway financed the whole thing. Her and Bail Organa basically are the two richest people involved with the rebellion, and they pretty much financed the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, and then Luthen wife is the
the queen.
Right.
Yeah,
yes.
But Luthen, and then Luthen is the dude in the background and on the underground doing all the dirty work. But yeah, I think that's the Andor story really is Mon Mothma's story.
So
to something that you mentioned previously, like Vader. So there's of course another book. There's a book called The Rise of Darth Vader, which basically takes place immediately after Revenge of the Sith, and so he's basically tasked with, like, the Emperor is basically like, yo, you told me that you took care of all of these Jedi. Why am I getting reports of Force users being here and there and here and there? Yo, listen, I'm not even going to tell you what I'm thinking right now. Go do your job. And so Vader is basically pissy the entire time because he doesn't have full control of his body. He's been dressed down by the Emperor for the very first time, basically told for the first time that he's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. And so he goes on a tear through all of these different, basically it's like a reverse detective story, except Vader is the one being the private investigator. So he narrates the story, and he's running down Jedi, and it's great that they tell the story from his perspective, because he fails. Like, some of the Jedi get away, and that is the beginning of, in earnest, him going absolutely apeshit, trying to find, just tearing a swath through the galaxy. And that's where the myth of Darth Vader is sort of born, because now he's blatantly just often Jedi in front of people. If he finds you in a town square, he's beheading you, he's gutting you, he's doing basically the Vader that we see in the end of Rogue One. Just extrapolate that across the galaxy, and him basically hunting down Jedi.
And so early on, they also injured him before when he first started. Because I know the book you're talking about, because I had it and I read it, and he immediately Palpatine introduces him to the entire Imperial officer command. Like Palpatine brings him in, and he's like, "This is basically the extension of me, and you will obey him and do it. If he gives you a command, it came from me.
It's from me.
It's from me. If he tells you to do something, it's me telling you to do something." And one of the Imperial officers got lippy, and Vader literally lifted him and several others off their feet and broke their necks just right there in front of, and dropped them. And Palpatine and Vader just walk away. And that was the beginning. This is like the Jedi Temple is still burning. Like, the smoke is still like, he had just came off the slab. He had just told him Padme was dead, and he kept digging that that screw into Vader's soft points, like, because like Josh said, he immediately goes from telling them about Padme being dead to dressing him down to telling him you maybe I should have picked another apprentice or like, you know, things like that. So yeah, you're right. Then that's when he has those early failures. But that book is really good because.
No, and I think that's good because that's how they kind of show in. That's where like all these other side Star Wars stories comes in, right? You get the Star Killer, right? For Star Wars Unleashed, which is like Star Killer is basically Darth Vader's like Padawan at a certain level. He's the one that's killing some of these rogue Jedis that Vader doesn't get to. In the comic books,
he's the anti Ahsoka.
Basically the anti Ahsoka, and then you have. And then in the books, the Vader books from Marvel, you have Dr. Aphra, and Dr. Aphra is basically like basically an evil Han Solo, essentially. And so and he uses her to get artifacts from Jedis that he's been looking for, blah 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 blah, which is cool. Until she turns on him and he kills her, and she survives and then has her own little path. But again, you have all these different stories and things that you can pull from, and I think that like overall, to kind of circle it back to Andor, it was good that at the very least we got a complete story that bookend what we were talking about. We had this is where it started from. We know exactly where it ends, and he did a good job of filling in those blanks. But at the same time, if you didn't see Andor season 1 and 2, and you just watched Rogue One and you went into A New Hope, you're still getting the exact same story. You're just not getting all that context. And so I think that like much like Clone Wars, Clone Wars, the series makes Revenge of the Sith a better movie because now you have context for all of that happens in there. And same thing with Andor. You watch Andor, then you watch Rogue One. It's like, boom, this is wild. Like you now see the journey of Cassian and Andor going from like, just like, I'm just out here doing my thing to holy shit, the Empire is crazy. We need to fucking do something about them. So I think at the end of the day, like, as much as it is annoying that they kept doing these little prequel things, if they do it on the level of Andor, then it's actually better for everyone because we get to see dope character development, dope stories. And there's, like you said, we have quibbles, but like in general, it was not time wasted. And it's easily one of the best Star Wars Disney series that they have. And I'm glad that it happened.
Or just give us Knights of the Old Republic or tell me something past Luke.
Listen, before Old Republic is all I want. I can't ask for anything else because that's the only thing I want.
Because they've done it all already. Yeah.
And there's like 3,000 years of like Bane existed like 2,000 years after Revan. So that.
So much
you
fun.
got a lot of room.
You got a lot to go from. A lot.
Yeah, you do whatever you want, and it'd be
Darth Malgus destroyed the Jedi, or he invaded the Jedi Temple. Like there's so many. You could
that alone. You could build a whole story. You could build a season of a show just based around Malgus and his invasion of the Temple.
Or the Vizsla Mandalorian, who's the first man who created the Darksaber. Like that all took place during the Old Republic, the Jedi Mandalorian Wars. Like that, all of that stuff was so good.
So much. Like so much fun, and that's like that stuff. Yeah, that stuff is. And that's the fun stuff, right? And it's weird. It's sad because they've been trying to careen us through this New Republic shit, or High Republic, sorry. Which is all I've read. About a third of it, and it's not great. It's just kind of it's there, but it doesn't give you much. So all right, so before we go off on more tangent stuff of Star Wars, Andor just ended. The last show before this was Skeleton Crew, Goonies in Space, I call it, which I haven't watched yet.
I was gonna say I haven't watched a single episode.
You know what, I might take the sword and be the one man review of it, and just you see what happens. It's Goonies in Space, so it's kids, it's Star Wars, it's fun, and it could be good. Well, I'm not. But anyways, now that we've finished this up.
So can I make one last point?
Yep.
They can't go back to what they've been doing after Andor. Because it's gonna be that I was telling somebody, if they travel backwards and decide that they're gonna drop back down to the quality of show that they've been doing previously, it's going to be worse now because now you've seen that they can do it. You've seen that they're able to put together 2 seasons of a coherent narrative. that had scope, that had breadth, that had depth, that was character driven when it needed to be, plot driven when it was supposed to be, for the most part. It wasn't perfect, but it hit the notes where it was supposed to, where they were supposed to happen in the song. If you now travel back to doing shows the quality of storytelling on the order of an Acolyte, it's going to be worse, because you've now given people a taste of quality television. There are people who don't watch Star Wars that watch this show and think this is one of the best television shows they've ever seen.
Well, it's already happened. It's already happened. Andor season 1. What was followed? Acolyte. What else? A couple other shows. So it's already happened.
Crew, yeah.
I don't know if Skeleton Crew is bad. I just know that Acolyte was.
I'm gonna assume that it is. I have no reason not to.
Ahsoka was kind of ass. Rebels 2.5.
Ahsoka was mad. But all of this.
I mean,
Ahsoka was okay.
Yeah, it was.
It was serviceable, but I think if you hadn't watched Rebels or been a fan of that arc of storytelling, you probably would not have been into Ahsoka as much. It's not that well done.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's well done visually. Good visual.
Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah, but if you're a Star Wars
fan,
it's good enough.
It's good enough, but it's not amazing.
Yeah, if you watch Star Wars and I like Star Wars regular stuff. I didn't watch any of the cartoons, and you just watch Ahsoka. It's not that good. And then Acolyte, you know how bad Acolyte is. There's like 45 minutes of the whole season that like is actually worth watching. The rest of it's just like ugh.
The premise of Acolyte was special.
Oh yes, it was brilliant. I thought the
potential.
So, and I was having this conversation with Dee the other day,
using high pop adjectives like brilliant. I don't know. I'm
Stop it.
Hear this thing. You use brilliant.
Oh my God, bro. Anyway, I was having a conversation with D'Angelo the other day, and it seems like not just in Star Wars, but like in the broader spectrum of television and film, there's some really good stories. When you look at the bullet points of how you travel through the story, it seems like it's really good. But then someone sits down and writes it, and they write complete garbage in the spaces in between. And so you lose all the essence of what could have been a good story to bad writing. And it's just, I have a weird feeling that if you sit down and look at the bullet points of a show like Acolyte, it's the same deal. It's the exact same deal. The parts could have been there. I can't tell because the writing was so bad. And the acting wasn't exactly great.
When we had that conversation, I was just gonna say when we had that conversation, it was just about character development and the way character choices end up determining where the narrative arcs go. It's not about the plot. I don't know if Acolyte would lend itself to that because it wasn't very character driven. It was more. Well, it was. They tried.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You see what? But that to my point. Like,
hang on. They tried.
Good.
I was just gonna say they tried, but the outline of what they had, I don't know. Maybe it could have worked. I don't know. I can't say if it would have worked or not.
The outline is what I think could have worked. It's just in the execution, they lost it all. It could have been there, but I don't know how much of it was there and how much of it was lost to bad writing. But I feel like if you just breeze through this happened, and then this happened, and because this happened.
Honestly,
in framework as a skeleton,
good pitch, bad execution. That's what I think you're arguing.
That's what I think.
You're arguing good pitch, bad. And like again, we could probably do a whole nother show about how we can make Acolyte better, which is a whole nother conversation for another time. But I would say
we could make Batman versus Superman better if we really tried.
Oh Lord have mercy! Who shall not be named? So where does Star Wars go from here? That's a better question. Cam, I'm like where did we go? Right? There hasn't been there's not. I mean, there was May the 4th just passed. They had their big thing. A couple things popped out, but like again, I think Star Wars, much like Marvel, is in this weird space where they've squandered their goodwill to a point where people don't even know if they want Star Wars anymore. And so I think Go ahead, D. Tell them why you mad.
I was just gonna say, I think where Star Wars should go next is away for a little while. Just go away for a little while.
That's not gonna
and then
happen.
Come back with something fresh. No, I know it's not gonna happen. I know it's not gonna happen because of the capitalist machine and then all of the sea of idiocy that we live in. But I'm saying if we're really being honest, when was there the most excitement about Star Wars? At the outset of The Force Awakens and the sequel trilogy. Why? Because there had been about at least 10 years since 15 years since a Star Wars film had been made. So that's just my thought. Go away. But if you're going to do a story, go to the past. And I mean beyond that High Republic Disney crap.
I spoke too soon because I knew that there was a slate that they actually announced. So,
I was going to say,
yeah. Just to recap it. So, in the future, there's a couple dates, but you know how dates are. So you got Star Wars Vision season 3 happening later on this year. You got Mando and the Grogu movie happening probably next year or some shit. Star Wars Starfighter, which is going to be the standalone with Ryan Gosling, which with Sean Levy, which should be interesting, but I'll see what happens. James Mangold has a film that's going to come up. Sean Levy has another film doing with Ray, which I still don't know what the fuck that's going to be about.
I was going to say the New Jedi Order, basically. That's what.
Yeah.
I'm irritated that they're calling it that because that was the book series that ended the Legends, the Legends end of the canon that they choose to ignore now, but was a really, really good. It was like several years worth of novels, and it was arguably one of the best things they've come up with Star Wars, and I'm a little salty that they're using that title now. I didn't mean to derail you. Please go ahead.
That. Yeah, the New Jedi Order movie sometime in the future. Taika Waititi has a movie coming up. Filoni's going to get to direct at some point and get his own New Republic Mandoverse movie, and then Simon Kinberg is going to do a Star Wars trilogy. Full circle?
Absolutely not. No. I refuse.
Now, I will not. About what, 10 to 15, maybe 20 years worth of movies? 15
probably.
Yeah, that's easily 10.
Yeah,
I guarantee
Taika has one. There's a Lando movie. There's a Kevin Feige project that's still up in the air.
Okay, I guarantee you, out of all
Rogue Squadron also.
Out of all those announced, I bet only about 5 of those get made, if that.
Probably.
And I actually hope that only a few of them get made because most of them sound like completely nonsense that nobody cares to see. I don't want to see no Starfighter with Ryan Gosling. What is this? What is this Top Gun Star Wars? What are we trying to do here? Like, I don't want to see that. And this is going to be set during the same thing, during the Galactic Empire. So, let's go away from all that crap. But
listen, I can mess with a James Mangold movie, maybe Taika, because Taika left a really bad taste in my mouth with the last Thor film, Love and Thunder. A Lando movie, I think you could do a series. I don't think he needs a movie. Rogue Squadron, they're dead set on doing it, so fine, whatever. I'm neutral about that.
Lando is a fine side character. We don't need a full movie with Lando.
No, we don't need a movie. Simon Kinberg is dead to me after his X-Men films. How
he Starfighter didn't work is just
because for every hit he has a miss.
No, I know
his misses are higher profile, unfortunately, than his But I think the last hit he had was Mr. and Mrs. Smith. And literally everything else has been bad.
It was a rhetorical question statement. I know exactly why Simon Kinberg still gets work.
Let's keep it PG, buddy.
All I said was I know exactly why he gets work. I didn't say nothing else.
I didn't want you to say why.
I wasn't.
His directorial debut was Dark Phoenix. Okay, we can end now. Anyway,
yes.
So
this is what I'm trying to tell you. He's been writing all this time, and his directorial debut was bloody Dark Phoenix. This is what I'm talking about.
Nope, not catching me. We're not going on a side tangent on that.
No. Do we need to?
Look,
we don't need to.
As much as we would like different and new stories. D'Angelo, I'm gonna have to disagree with you on the take of Starfighter story. I wouldn't mind it as a series, but again, it goes back into the Skywalker saga.
But they're doing two sets of Starfighter-ish movies. So to be clear, Starfighter is one movie, Rogue Squadron is another movie. It's two different movies that they're trying to do.
I don't care to see them in a movie. Just make a series about that. If they're gonna do anything now, I'm more interested in an animation. But once I've seen Rian Johnson attached to a film, I'm out.
I'd agree.
I'm done.
Co-sign.
So there's nothing. What am I
give
looking
Gareth
for?
Edwards.
If it's not,
give Gareth Edwards a sequel. Give him a trilogy.
Look, if it's
let
not,
him do something.
If it's not Filoni attached to it, I don't really care. If it's animation,
technically speaking, he's attached to everything. I'm
talking about like him taking the helm, like him being the guy. So if it's not
supposedly
him,
he greenlit. He looked at the Acolyte script and was like, "Yeah, go ahead."
He may not be actively writing those things, but he is approving what they're putting out.
Okay, well, I mean, like I said, I want him to direct something because he don't really miss when he's doing the directing and the major writing. But I'm more looking forward to animation. I don't care for the series.
You guys saw Ahsoka? Ahsoka was okay. It wasn't great.
He didn't miss. It wasn't a home run, but it wasn't a miss.
And they should have, like Boba Fett, it should have been called Mandalorian 2.0, and like Ahsoka, it should have been called Rebels 2.0. We know what it is, 2. Man. Like,
yeah,
2.5, man. It is what it is. It wasn't her story.
We know what it is, but that just proves my point about the quality that's going into the storytelling.
So it is what it is.
I will wrap it. I'll wrap it with that. I think that we know that with the Disney capitalistic machine that we're just going to get a bunch of slop over the next X amount of times.
We're gonna have a story about Wookiees.
Facts.
I'd actually watch that.
I'd watch that. I was going to say I'd watch that.
I watched that before any of the other stuff that you just listed.
Yep.
I'd rather see a Wookiee film over all the rest of that stuff.
It's like I said. So I don't know where they're gonna. I mean, we know where they're going. But we don't know if it's going to be good. And I think that's the place. We're going to a galaxy of uncertainty.
Quick final question: do any of you think that Kathleen Kennedy's departure will make a negative or net positive difference or neutral?
I think it doesn't matter until someone else, the next person, comes in and what happens afterwards. I think there's too much credit given to her on the success and failures. She's obviously there and she's the buck stops with her. But at the end of the day, Feige also takes, I mean, not Feige, Filoni also take a little bit of that. He has to own some of these stinkers,
the more recent ones.
Yeah, because they heard what the fans said. He's the one. He's the heir apparent, and now but recently, what I've seen from him is him using these to vehicle his characters in Star Wars and to do sequels to the stuff that he was already working on. That's what that's what the Tales of the Empire, Jedi, and Underworld have been. All characters focused on the characters that he has created. I have mixed feelings about Filoni. In my mind, he exists in two ways. One, as a very great Star Wars creative and fan, and in the other side, he is a glorified fanfic writer. But again, I lean more toward the other side. I lean more toward the left.
What makes you feel like he's a glorified fanfic writer?
Who created Star Wars?
George Lucas.
Okay, so he didn't.
But it's been handed off to him for more or less.
It has, but he is not the original author. Is my point.
Okay.
Yeah,
it could be a whole. It could be a whole. And like I said, I don't feel that way about him as in completely. Like I'm saying, when he does things like with Ahsoka, for example, that was a chance to tell a story. Now he created Ahsoka, so that's fine. But when you shoe in a Rebel sequel, Now I'm seeing you using this as an opportunity to tell the stories you want instead of following this sort of linear or whatever, this lineage of storytelling.
Right.
It's a whole nother conversation. And it's just really an opinion. It's not a mark against him. Like, there are some great...
Speak with respect when you're referring to the chief creative officer and executive vice president of Lucasfilm, sir.
Okay. All right.
So for the record, Josh works for Lucasfilms because we don't.
Yeah.
Dude, I wish. If anybody from Lucasfilm is out there, I'm available. Give me a call. You know what I'm saying? Look me up on my LinkedIn. I'm out there. You know.
And with that, we'll put a pin in it. Thank you for, if you've gotten this far, that means you're a Star Wars geek and you have much
I know, right?
knowledge.
And I'm very sorry for you.
Exactly. You've been on so many random tangents. So if you got this far, salute you.
Then we really appreciate you.
Yeah.
And watch Andor season 2.
Yeah, and once again, like, subscribe. We're on the YouTubes and the Amazons and the Googles and the iTunes and stuff. So thanks for listening once again, and we are out. Peace.
Misa, see you later.